All right. Podcast number 3, consciousmatter.org. You can find us at Twitter, at matterconscious. I hope you can spell it. We have a special guest with us tonight. I'll introduce our guest, whose name is Adrian Brooks Collins. How are you doing, sir?
Very well. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into it. In previous podcasts, we've just done too much small talk in the beginning. Tell us about your career.
The last 10 years have been 2 years of film school, LA City College, and then 8 years of screenwriting. And I had those 2 screenplays stage read at the Lee Strasberg Theater in West Hollywood with a full cast. So that's been the primary focus beyond survival.
Fantastic. Do you want to tell us something about your film that you're working on currently?
Yeah, this is entitled Idlewild, Under the Spirit of Talkeets. And it was inspired by actual events that occurred in the summer of 1973 when I was a boy of 8, and my second eldest sister was nearly abducted by the town, turned out to be a serial killer, and his cohort grabbed her and forced her into a car, and she kicked and clawed her way out and came running home through the woods in a state of terror. And when I saw that look on her face and her scratched hair, her scratched skin, her
abrasions,
yeah, disheveled appearance, I knew that she was traumatized. And as events developed, I saw that there was a story behind this.
That's what I call an opportunist.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, do you want to give us a slug line for it?
When ghosts don't know they're dead.
That is excellent.
Thank you.
Everybody that's listening, check it out. We've got a website.
idlewildthemovie.tumblr.net.
Now, for some people who have a hard time spelling, because I know some people can't spell at matterconscious, I don't know what's wrong with them, how would they spell Idlewild for your particular subject?
That's a good question. This is IDYLLWILD.
Idlewild, folks.
Idlewild, the movie.
Looking forward to it, and good luck.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited about it.
Now, let's talk metaphysics.
Sure.
One of my previous guests shocked me with a question and asked me, what is metaphysics? I responded, and I hope it was a good answer, but I think it means something different to everyone. What is metaphysics to you?
Above that which is physical is how I understand it. It is not that which is, made of matter. It is beyond that.
So it's basically information for the spirit side of the human being.
Yeah, it's the continuum. It's once we've left this realm or prior to our arrival to it, there is a wide open communication field that is meta above physical, metaphysics.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so you say our arrival here. Do you have any information that's been passed down by ancestors or just information that you've received somehow, some way about our true human origin?
That's a quest that I am on presently because I think it's an enigma, and I think that many searchers, many light workers ponder that same question. I don't. I asked my personal psychic, Edward Carrion, where to begin that journey, and he sent me to, I'm thinking of an early Nordic tribe, but I found that when that tribe was extant, they had already conquered an existent tribe before them. So, no, I don't have I don't have this origin answer yet.
That's okay. It's a question I think I like to ask everyone, whether they're on the podcast or just in regular everyday life, because I think with everyone's answer, you can get one truth. And the more sources for truth that you have, the closer you can come to an actual truth. It's
That's true, and it will be known certainly to me, somehow, I feel that I'll get that origin answer, and I think that's part of this Enlightenment age that we're in.
I wish more people would be more open-minded, especially those who believe in evolutionism, Darwinists, and those who believe in creationism. I just wish they'd have or would look further than what's printed in front of them for actual answers, because the human phenomena is the greatest creation in the history, or in the universe.
Yeah.
As far as we know, we don't know of other life forms. But speaking of other life forms, tell me what you saw today.
Well, I was out downtown Los Angeles bicycling with a friend, and we came around a corner, 7th and 7th Street, and downtown, south of Little Tokyo.
Sure.
And there was some people standing at the corner looking up with high-powered, expensive cameras, telephoto lenses. And we were looking up and couldn't see anything, and then we inquired further, and they pointed out unidentified flying objects. And there was 3 spheres very, very high up in the sky. And this is broad daylight. This is about
what time?
3 o'clock this afternoon.
Wow.
And we started staring at them, and we couldn't believe our eyes. And they were not balloons. They were not planes. They were not...
not drones?
Not drones. They would park, and then they would relocate themselves, and then they would park again. And this went on for a good half an hour, 40 minutes. And then a cluster arrived of about 8 or 10 of these spheres, and joined them and went on. This gentleman, Robert, claims to have the ability to conjure, and when they would disappear, he would begin this conjuring, and they would reappear again. This was all on camera and videotape. And I had heard about and witnessed this ability through a YouTube video where another man claimed to have this conjuring ability. But it was quite profound. We went on for well over an hour of just watching these UFOs acting, spontaneously in the sky and being UFOs. It was fascinating.
Did you get any cell phone footage?
My camera couldn't, but my friend's camera got cell phone footage, and the high-powered cameras were also videotaping. So it'll hit the web shortly.
Unbelievable.
I was also interviewed after that, and they're going to, I believe, segment in my interview as an eyewitness.
Wow. I've never seen a UFO. I dream of the day that I get to see a UFO. I have a question for you.
Okay.
What is the Matrix?
Well, I would equate it with the astral plane, which is part of the Akashic Record. The Akashic Record, of course, is the database in the sky, if you will. It's an ancient and verifiable data center where all former life times, current lives, and future lives are tracked. The future life aspect is obviously more exposed to scrutiny because we have choice in these lifetimes. But the Matrix, I would think, is that which oversees and tabulates our experiences in the physical world.
Okay, and let's say in a third-dimensional plane, as in, hey, I'm just a citizen of the United States of America. What is the Matrix to that person?
There is probably... you're taking me out on a limb here. I think that that's just sort of conventional thinking. You know, I'm born, I get married, I work at a steady job, and I leave, inheritance to my children. I think that's sort of the formula.
The box.
The box, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, and I think one of the most beautiful words in the English language is freedom. What does freedom mean to you?
That I can express exactly what I am thinking and feeling and endeavoring to do, and that it is supported and validated and recognized and encouraged by those that are in my sphere of friendship and sharing my life,
I hear you. It's getting a little hot in there, so I think I'm going to have to remove the goggles. That's too bad. They're a lot of fun to wear. I'm going to read you a couple of tweets.
Okay.
And just your honest and your honest response to them would be extremely appreciated. Just to see, how are we all thinking on this plane? We're all on the same plane, but we all think so differently. So I think Twitter is beautiful because it combines our thoughts, and I think it can be used to raise the collective consciousness of the planet. Once the planet is in total, what's the word? Not contact, but almost able to connect instantaneously. I think that's when new inventions hit. I think that's when new ideas and systems can be created with the collective consciousness of all of humanity, which Twitter is doing.
Agreed.
There is no creator, only creation.
I think we're all creators. I believe we live in a programmable universe, and that which we endeavor to do by committing ourselves to comes about as a result of the fact that we are all creators.
We are all creators. I think going back to the Matrix question, people fall into a spell of not creating, and that's due to systems that are in place that allow, they do the creating for us. So all we do is show up, punch in, punch out, and we're done, versus taking it upon ourselves to leave our spiritual thumbprint on the world through our own creation, whatever that is, music, paintings, graffiti art, literature. Who are some of the people that you read or listen to that completely inspire metaphysics around you?
Dr. Schwartz, who was a conventional psychotherapist and discovered through relaxing his patients that they fell into past lives and were able to recall entirely lifetimes when they were not in their current human form, vis-a-vis they may have been a different gender, a different ethnicity, and they lived in a former place. He's analyzed these past lives and written entire books of multiple cases of people who have documented former lives, and some of these cases have been able to verify the names and occupations and cities where these individuals lived in former incarnations. That, to me, is just fascinating, that he's been able to document this information and also break through the conventional Western psychoanalytical paradigm and introduce and incorporate the metaphysical aspects of former incarnations. He's quite an inspirational writer, and we're friends on Facebook, and I watch his documentaries.
By any chance, off the top of your head, do you have his Facebook page or Twitter feed that you would like to disseminate?
I think it's Dr. Brian Schwartz is his site, and I believe his books are Life Between Lives, that comes to mind. But anytime you look at past life reincarnation, his name will be at the top of the list.
Do you know anything about perhaps your past lives? Anything in that realm? Have you been able to dig up information of sorts about it?
Yeah, there's a brilliant past life reader here. She's French. She lives in West Hollywood. Her name is Dominique Merlin. And we had met in about 1998, and I had a consultation with her in about 2000, wherein she told me that in a former life I had been a frontier soldier, and I had been on my post, and I anticipated the arrival of a warring Indian tribe and felt that we would fall to their attack. And so I brought this information down to the general, and the general asked me how I felt rather, he asked me why I thought this was an impending action, and I said that it was my feelings. And he said, feelings are for women, and we don't rely on feelings. We're a military, so go back to your post and do your job. And I was humiliated, and I was laughed at by the other soldiers. And when I got back to my post, we were overrun by Indians, and we were all slaughtered. The way of my death was a poisoned arrow to my neck. And Dominique said to me, having never seen the back of my neck, that there is a, pardon the expression, a pustule on the back of my neck that is still exuding the poison from the arrow that entered my neck in the former lifetime. And in fact, there is one singular pustule on my neck that has throughout my life exuded a fluid. And I know that sounds disgusting, but it's nowhere else on my body. And that she had not seen the back of my neck and told me this is how I died and that's why it's there in this life is profound and astounding to me. And she said, you also left that world humiliated, based, your actions were based on intuition, and you were ostracized from the male construct. So it was humiliating, and you felt bad because you felt it was your failure that led to the death of all those people because they didn't listen to you. When in fact it was the general's choice not to listen to me, and I had been right. So she said, focus on the fact that you had psychic ability then, and you have stronger psychic ability now. And all this comes at the foot of having known that I shot a gun, a rifle in a former life, being fascinated with forts, the frontier, early soldiers, and Indians as a child. So it all lined up perfectly as to who I had been. I was also probably French or Caucasian, and that's how I saw my hair. I'm half African-American now, so I have a completely different genetic basis. But I had seen myself as a straight-haired soldier. So,
you know, it's just so scary when they can be so spot on. I have a hard time believing in psychics. I have a hard time believing in mediums and people who can channel. But I also have never patronized for that service. So I look at it from the outside looking in, thinking they're just telling you something you want to hear. But, you know, that account is so specific that it just can't be a general statement that covers the masses. And
exactly. There are many charlatans in the field of psychometry of psychics, and you can see them usually with the neon palm in their front yard, palm of the hand in the front yard. If you are referred to a psychic, as was the case with Dominique Merlin, a mutual friend had a brief consultation with her in a cafe, and he said he was so accurate, and he knew I was into metaphysics, and he said, you've got to meet her, and that's how we were introduced. And sure enough, she's an astounding psychic. They're rare, but they are authentic, and they are capable when you meet the right ones.
Okay, so she is based in Los Angeles.
She is Dominique Merlin at your-past-lives.com, I believe.
Is that her specialty, is past lives, or can she just tell you stuff about the future?
That's her default expertise.
Okay. What do you think about this tweet? Shoes have personality.
Inanimate objects, to me, remain inanimate objects. I mean, if you want to talk from a fashion sense that they speak to who you are, then sure, we invest a lot in shoes, but I wouldn't interview a shoe.
Okay, let's give it a little more. Let's dig a little deeper. Let's say someone's shopping, male or female. It just doesn't matter. They see a pair of shoes. They're immediately drawn to that pair of shoes. They have to have them. They'll pay whatever it costs, if it's $5 at a resale shop or $500 at a big-name retailer. They have to have them. Now, there are other shoes that are cut the same way. Why that pair? Do you think that pair has a personality?
I think we equate with shoes a lifestyle, and I think that's what we're buying. We're enhancing our lifestyle by buying that pair of shoes. But I wouldn't say that there's a conscious calling from the shoe to the prospective buyer.
Okay. How about this one? Your final destination is the journey.
I love that because it keeps the door open.
The door is always open, and you know, I subscribe to, I don't know what the word is for it, ideal, I suppose, that nothing's ever happened and everything is happening at the same time.
Sure, there's that theory that it's all happening at the same time, yeah.
A little chaos, a little chaotic, and if you want to describe humanity in one word, chaos is a great word.
There's, in the physical, the earth plane, there's always been this degree of chaos, quote unquote. I think our mind is geared toward the singular, and so that which is not singular can be disruptive to us. But I'm reminded of out-of-body experiences through traumatic, like car accidents and whatnot, where the person is conscious of being in three places at once, vis-a-vis they see themselves on the bed, they are floating over themselves, and they can hear the conversation in the lobby about their car accident simultaneously. So I think once we leave the physical plane, we reach a level of awareness that far exceeds our singular awareness presently, and thereby alleviating the chaos, and we come into a total knowing. And it can be of all things.
Now, when you say singular, I want to dig deeper on that one. I think the universe is built on duality. The whole universe is, we have a dual star system, binary stars is what I mean, and even down to the macro level of relationships, we partner up for the majority with one other person, couple up. Is singularity true freedom? Is it when you have broken away from a universe, an entire universe based on duality? Is that when you have hit your nirvana?
There is the, life contract, the quest, as in we're all individuals. I would say that rephrase the question for me, if you would, please.
I don't even know what I just said. Okay. Well, the entire solar system it's a binary star system. The entire solar system. Now let's bring it. That's a micro level. That's talking about everything possible is in duality. When we bring it down to the macro level, we are just talking about single human beings. Any human being out on this earth has an ideal of partnering up with at least one other person, creating a couple. So if the stars are coupled and then humans are coupled and everything in between is also coupled, I'd like to think that the entire universe is based on duality. Now, is singularity nirvana? Is it when you have broken away from everything in the entire universe of duality? Is that when you have achieved personal acceptance and relieving the need for duality? See, stars are drawn to each other by magnetism. Humans are also drawn together by magnetism. I don't mean little magnets with a North Pole and South Pole. I just mean an entire ocean of magnetism of North Pole and South Pole. Each human has a north end and a south end polarity. We are tied down to this earth by magnetism. If there was no magnetism, we'd float away. So, just to reiterate, is it the point that you find out that there is only you, that singularity actually takes its course within your mind, making it a standalone versus a couple sort of thought process when you're at peace with yourself?
I think you're talking about the quest that one might take on a sojourn or on a vision quest where they try to find the answer of self and the purpose of self. And though that's very much the case, we are individuals, I don't think, as was pointed out to me a number of years back, that we're here to be singular, to be alone. I think it's intentionally a shared journey, which is why there are so many other people out here to share this experience with us. when I was speaking of singularity earlier, I simply meant that we know that we're going to get in our car, we're going to go to our job, and after our job, we're going to go to our supermarket and get our, ingredients for meals. So there's sort of a linear quality. Whereas in the astral, when our consciousness is expanded, as I said, there's a multitude of information that can be absorbed readily without the necessity of reducing it to one or two, aspects. But no, I don't think that when you finally focus and reach your nirvana, it's because you did it as a soul individual. I think what you find while you're seeking that nirvana, you can bring back and share with another person, and that's what makes it all worthwhile.
Okay, I see. Let me throw this at you. I think to understand anyone around you, you must first understand yourself. And for people who have a clear understanding of who they are, they have a better understanding for who they are surrounded by. What are your thoughts on the self? And I'll just lead you in with this. A lot of mystics say that the self never reveals itself. Some other mystics say people spend an entire life running away from their self, which means there's something in the self that keeps people wanting more, desiring change, creating change in their life. It seems that the self is as hurtful as it is helpful. Tell me what your thoughts are on the self.
I believe our Western culture has cropped or removed the tendrils, if you will, of consciousness that bring us back to our origins. That is to say that we forget that we're a soul on a physical journey in a human body. And so we try to answer the callings of the soul with various material things, a pair of shoes, a pair of, headphones, or a pack of cigarettes, or whatever. We keep trying to fill this void when, in fact, the journey inward through largely meditation and self-awareness, mindfulness, will begin to fulfill those empty areas. We'll begin to actualize the quest and encourage one to accept themselves as the spirit that they are on this journey. I think people do spend a lot of time because the tools to understand one's soul, one's life contract, one's course through life, and how that one will interact with others can be full of questions. And I think those questions will scare certain individuals, so they run from those questions because they don't have the answers. But the answers are here, and they are within us, and we can find them so long as we're honestly willing to address them.
Yeah, I think the honest approach is probably the most difficult approach. It's not the best and it's not the worst, but I think it's the most difficult.
It is. It's a lifelong challenge. But I think, again, when you try to say, you fall into simplistic answers about the complexity of the human soul is when you get into trouble.
Okay, now I don't want to ask you what your faith is, but let's just take a general question at all religions. Mm-hmm. Do you think how do you feel about religion anyway? Just tell me that.
I am third generation non-observing. I have absolutely and positively no use for religion whatsoever.
Now, do you think it's possible that holders of real, true human origin information have manipulated the sacred knowledge and edited it for their basic good, for their profit? since there is money in all of religion. Do you think that they've taken a kernel of truth and actually taken a whole batch of truth and sprinkled it in little kernels of truth throughout all of their teachings?
They have conspired to deny that we all have a direct channel to God. And the minute you tell someone that they have to go through you to reach God, you're messing with the principles of existence. And I think consequently those structures implode. That's why we've seen the disintegration of a number of religions, and we will continue to see that, because one need not go through those channels to find God.
I love that. Here's something. I don't like the word learn. I prefer experience. Learning anything doesn't mean you can reproduce it. Experience is knowing versus learning. This is pretty much my thoughts on the school system. I don't think schooling should be mandatory. I don't think anyone should be forced to get an education. What happens when you force people to get an education, when you force someone to get a high school education, they take it for granted, number one. Number two, they may not use it to advance their education. The plan is, you go to high school, you go to college, you get out, you get a job. That's a failing system, if you ask me. Number one, lots of dropouts. Number two, lots of cheating. Number three, lack of inspiration in the students. When you have to be there, you don't want to be there. If it's optional, then only those with a true desire to learn will enroll in school. Only those with aspiration to be educated and educate others will involve themselves in the system. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's interesting. Schools and advanced education has come under a lot of analysis and restructuring lately, because we're becoming more and more aware of how we learn, why we learn, and how the experience of learning can advance or impede our achieving our objective. So again, it's another system that has begun to implode, but I think it's because it's going to re-engineer itself. It's going to hear those points that you brought up about the difficult elements within of forced education, and will learn to accommodate and provide insight in ways that are more receptive to the needs of the students themselves. So I think you're not alone by any means in feeling that it's a grid that is not always pleasant to be on. It's funny that you mentioned education, because I admire that you've got an advanced degree. I don't have an advanced degree, and at times I hold that as a limitation for my own aspirations, and yet I meet individuals who have degrees, and they scoff at presenting limitations on that idea, because, as you established, experience shows you the ins and outs of a particular objective. And I found, I ran a series of interviews through my employer recently, and they told me that the candidates were quirky and odd. Even though they were college graduates and qualified in the area, they were not individuals that they wanted to be around on a day-to-day basis. And becoming a well-rounded individual is experiential. So there is kind of a quandary there as to the widget production line of a college and the end result of a job, and the certainty of maintaining that job in the economy we're in. So certainly a lot of moving parts, and it's evolving, and I believe it's improving through failure.
I think you're exactly right. It is evolving. It's completely evolving. Now we're going to home-based universities, or should I say home-based education, where you can log on and be at university. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that is quite astounding.
I wouldn't have had the opportunity to get a degree without my family. I do thank them for that. It took me about 20 years to graduate college, and that's just because I was on a completely different system growing up.
But you did it, and that's fantastic that you did it and that your family supported you in doing it. And I believe I will. It's just not happened yet.
Yeah. Hey, take your time.
But you know what? I'm halfway there. I did the first 2 years, so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the fifth dimension. There's a lot of talk in the metaphysical world about the fifth dimension. There are people who make claims that they know what the fifth dimension is like. There are people who are making claims that our world is going from a 3D planet, a 3D reality, a three-dimensional reality, to a five-dimensional reality. These are some claims that I've heard and read on the internet, which don't trust anything, of course, on the internet. But hey, people are thinking this. They think that the consciousness shift is going to take the planet from three-dimensional to five-dimensional. Now, is this just a bunch of crap, or do people have some source of information about the fifth dimension that is actually based in truth?
You'll be happy to hear that I am certain that the fifth dimension is an actual realm, a conscious realm, an actual level above the fourth and below the sixth. As obvious as that sounds, the fourth and the sixth are also influential, respectively. But I've been paying close attention to a very interesting woman on YouTube by the name of Teal Scott, who is really taking the metaphysical world by storm, and she does it with great aplomb. She has reminded me that you can, through meditation, astral projection, and the like, enter the fourth, fifth, and sixth realm, wherein you can evaluate objectives. Say you have an invention and you want to see how that might manifest. You can, in those levels, the fifth dimension, look at the invention multidimensionally, analyze it, play with it, modify it, and then bring that conclusion back into the third dimensional world. So it's a real workshop. It's a real place, and it is where we're headed in terms of this period of enlightenment that we're undertaking presently. So it's absolutely upon us.
Okay, so in the fifth dimension, is it just a place for the mind, or is it a place that you can physically exist as well?
Presently, as human beings, it's for the soul. The mind, as I see it, is an amplifier of the soul's objective, and it's a device that is an interface between the physical world and, as I said, the objective of the soul. So that's why we have a mind. When we die, we no longer need the device, and our soul carries on. When you're on the fifth dimension, you can engage with fifth dimension consciousness vis-a-vis other souls, other individuals who can advise you, who can mentor you, who you can bounce questions off of, and they bring enlightenment. But they're not physical. They have, in some cases, been human beings. In other cases, they're not. They're from other galaxies. They're from other conscious forms. Or they haven't been human in so long that they've gained an astounding amount of information that they can impart in your company. But no, it's not for the physical. It's not. It's strictly a soul level manifestation.
Got it. Do you think it's do you think diversity or unity? This has nothing to do with the fifth dimension. It's just a standalone. Diversity or unity? What do you think is more important?
Well, diversity is the experiential panorama. So I think diversity is critical to contrast our experience against uniformity. Was that the other word you used?
Unity.
Unity. Thank you. Is convention, and I think where it assists, then it's good. But where it forces conformity, then obviously it's an obstacle.
Right. It's basically it's a tool, and you can use it for good or you can use it for evil.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the yin yang sign or symbol?
I don't really give it much thought anymore. I don't know if I ever knew its origin. I think I might have, sought it out at one point and then said, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. And obviously, it says there's bad in good and good in bad from, the layman's eye. But I don't know. There's people that subscribe to this notion that we all have a dark side and we all have this, this demon that we're battling with. And I don't subscribe to all that. I think as souls, we're pure and we can get, abused and misguided while we're down here. But I think we're trying to be happy and trying to overcome and trying to help others. That's really why we're here.
I believe that. Do you think humans are as old as the universe?
I think they could be older. I think we could be on this continuum for. Well, I don't know. The universe is pretty darn old, isn't it? So
it is.
That's that's the big conundrum. The chicken or the egg kind of thing is. I don't have that answer tonight. I'm sorry.
That's fine. This is why I ask. I really just don't believe in evolution whatsoever.
Huh.
I just don't believe in evolution whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I ponder that, what did a tiger evolve from?
Right.
What did a lion evolve from? And why did they come out so different?
Right.
And can one thing create all these different animals?
Right.
So I just have a really hard time of something will create something different. I think something will create itself.
Right.
It's a repeating pattern. I believe in repeating patterns and in the universe. And I just don't see us coming from chimps or any sort of primate that wasn't human in origin.
Yeah, for a long time, I subscribed to the evolutionary construct because that was the rubber stamp that I was told. Then recently, I came upon Puma Punku. It's Puma Punku, and it's one of the seventh wonders of the world or something. These are 4,000-ton stone interlocking blocks in Peru at the top of a barren plain, and there are hundreds of them. They don't know how they were cut. They're precision cut. They have interlocking angles that are beyond, Art Deco, beyond the Matrix in terms of, futuristic stuff. They're astounding. And the ground pattern shows that all of these panels were interlocked and that there was a huge temple. I don't think that's the result of evolution. I think that we have come to this planet as a conscious being from somewhere else for other reasons, and there may have been apes here. Now, it gets, kind of blurry because there's this holodeck concept that the entire world is something that each individual is projecting. And to some degree, I believe that because of experiences I've had where, for example, years ago, I was working on a media campaign, and the one individual who was able to introduce the graphics and link them all together, I had lost contact with, but I needed to reach him that day. And I hadn't seen him for like a year and a half. And so I said, well, if I want to reach him this day, I have to pray for his name on his name 3 times. And when I get from the 6th floor of this skyscraper to the 1st floor, he has to be on the corner across the street. And that's exactly what happened.
Candyman, Candyman, Candyman.
Exactly. So, that's the holodeck, kind of activity. It was impossible. But there he stood on the corner, and then he worked on the project, and we, published it. So we live in a world that is programmable, that is alterable, that is astounding. I could go into, just other related topics.
Okay, so just to go into what you're saying now, I don't think we were born in this time by accident. We are now living at the edge of humanity, at the bookend. There was a beginning, and if it were all to end now in the next 5 minutes, this would be the end. I don't think that we incarnated into this time frame by accident. And something else that I believe, it's all still happening. I think cavemen are still cavemen right now. I think the 1950s is still going on in all different dimensions. I think there's different dimensions because, number one, I don't believe in evolution. I don't think that I don't think that we can come from a mix of chimpanzee and other hominid and then create the Sphinx.
Right.
And then the Great Pyramids.
Right.
And people have about 1% information on the pyramids.
Yeah.
They don't realize that the Great Pyramid was built on the center landmass of the entire Earth. This is just information that isn't disseminated because it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. The pyramid builders, you're telling me they're fresh off of evolution? 10,000 years ago, someone builds a Sphinx, and just slightly before that, they were, let's say 100,000 years earlier than the Sphinx, they were just learning how to throw stones?
Yeah, there's definitely an inconsistency in the evolutionary profile. I believe, as Darwin pointed out, that certain birds had to modify their beak because there was no longer berries on trees, but there was clams on the shoreline. That makes sense to me. But as you say, to go from tree swinging chimps to pyramid building humans, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think minor changes in evolution are possible. Our thumbs getting a little bit shorter, sure, I can go with that. But I don't think we're going to go from something that's a hominid primate chimp to a human being with all of the facilities that we have spiritually. We look similar to chimpanzees and apes and monkeys. We look similar, but I think our soul is completely different.
Soul is a good point. Those chimps have souls as well, but they're on a different wavelength, and they're on a different quest, a different journey. So it's understandable that they have every reason to be, committed on their life course, but no, I don't think that we are derivative of them. It just doesn't make sense. And I think, again, it is said, there's books hidden from history and forbidden archaeology, great books that have led to great documentaries, where there are situations where they've mined into mountains looking for gold, and they've discovered clay pots and tablets from tens of thousands of years earlier from civilizations and tribes that they know nothing about. So they simply wipe them off the books, and they don't discuss them. So we are not getting all the information. And fortunately, the web and the internet and independent producers such as yourself are questing and getting answers to these questions, or certainly pulling back the curtain to these inconsistencies. But I would agree with you. We're not the latest iteration of chimps.
Okay, now humor me on this. Is it possible that we're living in a computer simulation?
Well, that, again, is the holodeck concept, meaning our brain is capable of generating a computer simulation, and we agree upon it, and that's part of the life experience. And more and more I have to think that, for example, there's a doctor, he was a neurologist, and he's all over the web. Oprah's interviewed and whatnot. He had a near-death experience, and this physical realm, which we are in, opened up, and he was in a totally different space where he saw his deceased sister that had died earlier. I'm confusing stories now, but in fact, there was another sister by a former marriage that he didn't know, but then he realized that that's who she was on that plane, and came back and verified that, in fact, he had a half-sister by a former marriage that he knew nothing about. My point being that there is some sort of this is the physical world as we see it is some sort of presentation which is within a greater universe of consciousness that stores vast amounts of data that are simultaneous with our world experience presently, but in fact are completely separate. Or that is to say, an egg within an egg kind of thing.
Wow. I think this ties in what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes or so, going from Puma Punku to a computer simulation. I think we're incarnated into this time specifically because of our mental capacity. I think some people incarnated as cavemen. I think some people incarnate as present-day beings. I think some people incarnate as medieval times beings. I think everyone incarnates into a different realm, and it happens for them organically because of their mental capacity, because of what they can accept and what they can produce. I don't think nature puts anything out of place.
There is much documentation on life contracts, and there's a book, Life Between Lives, which presents cases where you construct the sort of life that you want to live, and then you enter that life, and it can be in apparently any period of time that you so desire. I misnamed the author. It's Brian Weiss, getting back to this former life aspect. But in
What's
terms
the name of the book again?
It's Life Between Lives, I think is the title.
Okay.
And Raymond Moody is also another past life reincarnation analyst, psychoanalyst doctor. But when you speak of the simultaneity, if that's a word,
I like it,
of worlds congruent and all at different times, I think there's some extent of confirmation around that. There are documentaries that, in fact, and this often happens on vacations for couples. They'll go on like a wedding, honeymoon, and whatnot, and they'll take a left or a right turn off a given path, and they'll find themselves in a different time and space. And I think it's partially due to being in a vacation mind. You know, they say when you're in a vacation mind, you're not bound to the conventional thinking. But I think also there are these pockets where people forget to move on, and they just keep reliving the times that they've enjoyed. So there's certainly validity to the experiences being documented.
All right, I think we're going to wrap up this hour with this one last topic, the Bermuda Triangle. Have you ever looked into it? Do you know any personal accounts or stories about the Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah, in my adolescence, shortly, and I don't mean to denigrate the topic at all, but shortly after my Bigfoot obsession, I fell into the Bermuda Triangle analysis. And through the limited, maybe 2 or 3 books study that I did, there was sort of enough inconsistencies to make me wonder if whether or not it was simply being enhanced to sell copies of books and magazines. But there are all kinds of anomalies. You can ask, I have a friend that I was with today who's a pilot, and there are anomalies in travel, in direction. I mean, they still haven't found that plane that crashed yesterday in Malaysia. And here we're at the top of our game in terms of communications. There was a CIA device, apparently, that tracks flashes around the world constantly, and they analyzed the device. There's nothing there. And all this is to say that things happen that are far beyond our conventional awareness, and maybe a significant number of them happen, in the region of the Bermuda Triangle. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. I'm trying to think of an individual who spoke recently on metaphysics, and he had a military friend who was on a submarine, and they were on the region of the ocean, and 2 light orbs analyzed the submarine on all sides and then shot past them in the water. And to this day, they don't know what they were. They know that they were under analysis by another consciousness, in ships underwater. So there's a lot out there that is not fully accountable.
It's amazing. speaking of accountability, you're accountable for telling me the truth about the pyramid building. How do they do it?
I was practicing
Rosicrucian?
Rosicrucian, thank you. Probably in 2008, 2009. But they asked me to construct a testorium. It's a term for a personal meditation room, and I did in a second closet that I have. But I was uncomfortable with isolating myself for lengthy periods of time and meditating. I wanted to be more participatory in the world. But during this investigation of the Rosicrucian faith, I was made aware of the fact that Egyptians are attributed with daily out-of-body experiences. They had mastered meditation, and they would sit and they would rise up out of their physical body in astral projection, and they would communicate with higher life forms, and they would be enlightened as to how to live in the world around them and how to actualize the world around them. So I have no doubt that the Egyptians were directly and intentionally and consciously integrated with not only their soul's journey, but the soul's journey of others above them. There's more to just enslaving a bunch of people and forcing them to lock bricks together for, a while.
As often as I hear it, and as many times as I see it in fictional television, of slaves dragging 2-ton stones
right.
with rope and tree bark, right. I'll never believe it. Right. I'll never believe it.
Yeah.
There's a guy named AdrianBrooks. Have you ever heard of him?
Is this the Southern Florida guy?
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Coral Castle.
Coral Castle, exactly.
He says he knew the secret of the pyramid builders,
right.
and created a castle made of limestone,
right.
Out in Florida in the boonies.
Yeah.
I forget what city it was.
Yeah.
But for anybody who's listening or on Twitter, we've tweeted about him in the past. AdrianBrooks. And I'm going to spell that for you because it's really hard. He's, I think, from Lithuania.
Mm-hmm.
LeedSkALNIN. Sometimes I have an accent, sometimes I don't. But we're going to wrap up this hour with a recap. Please tell us about your movie.
Thank you.
One more time.
Sure. Again, the title is Idlewild, Under the Spirit of Takits. I've only shot 3.5 minutes for the teaser, and I've written the screenplay. And the screenplay is now, it's actually at Junto Box Films. That's Junto Box Films, which is a democratically based film production company where you get voted in. It reached level 4 last summer, and it's now under formal analysis by some high-profile Hollywood types, which you'll see if you visit the site. But I'm sorry this hour is ending because there's so much I wanted to tell you about the story. But nonetheless, the serial killer who happened to be our neighbor in 1973 in Idlewild, who confessed to killing 9 women, is only part of the story. Again, I'm mulatto, half African-American, and there was a friend of our family's who was also mulatto, who was a piano player at the local supper club. And he was accused of a triple rape at what was Isomata then, the USC summer camp, which he had absolutely nothing to do with. It was, in fact, 3 African-American entertainers who were on tour and performed that night at the Isomata campus. But nonetheless, they, as racist cops, decided to arrest the mulatto piano player, railroaded him into prison, and he died in prison. They interviewed the serial killer who, as I said, confessed to the 9 murders. They gave him a polygraph, which they determined as inconclusive, and they let him go. So this story is based on those contrasts, on the crazy world we live in, but it's motivated by a conversation I had with my psychic, Edward Carrion, who is a former police officer, an astounding remote viewing psychic, who made contact with the souls of the murdered women. Certainly the lead case, which was Laura Louise Escamillo. And Laura was desperate to speak to me from the astral about writing this film. She said, there's others of us out here. And so we're going to the end of the Jack Rabbit Trail near Blythe, where her body was found, to make further communication with the spirits there. But her plight is one of the core elements that contributed to the writing of this story. And lastly, there is the Kauaian Indian legend of Takits. Takits was a shaman who was an Indian of the Kauai tribe who apparently went crazy and took captive, as the legend goes, members of his own tribe. And when I researched this, it is in fact a lengthy legend. So what I chose to do was to integrate his succumbing to powers greater than himself in that region, and they subsequently have influenced other homicides down the line. So it's an interlocking story of events that date back over many generations. I think it'll be quite a fascinating screenplay, if I may say so.
Very powerful.
Thank you.
Mr. Adrian Brooks Collins, what is your Twitter?
My Twitter is @IdleWildMovie.
Tough to spell, but I think they'll find it, and I'm going to go ahead and tweet a few times about you this week, especially
Thank you.
with promoting the podcast and your movie. And I want to say thank you, and you're always welcome back. We can always do a second session after a break. You're always welcome back on this podcast whenever you feel like sharing more knowledge and information. I think your metaphysical outlook on life is phenomenal. I wish there was a lot more people like you. And, it's kind of nice that it is you. I think it's nice that it's a uniqueness, because if everybody was like this, then nobody would be like this.
It's an honor to have been interviewed, and I thank you for a wonderful evening and great discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian.